Hello, Namaste. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining in on a weekend morning. So, after a long wait, we are back here again. And myself, Kunal Agarwal, I stay in India in a small town called Agarwal. It's based near Mumbai. So, I have been a collector for a long time, and I would like to thank Hobby Club for giving me this opportunity to present about one of the themes I collect. Let's just dive into the topic and we will discuss further. So the topic for today is odd material node gets. Odd material. What does odd material node gets convey to you? So basically here odd material means in context of banknotes. Usually money or the paper notes are made out of paper, or right now many countries have started using polymer substrate for it as well. So anything apart from that is odd material. That is something not used in general codes and Notgelds. So Notgelds are basically emergency money. It's a German word for money used in times of crisis. So right now I'm going to restrict this presentation to odd material notes from Germany and Austria, which were used in times of emergency. Okay, so let's go ahead. This is something about myself. This is a picture of me in my natural habitat with some good banknotes there. It's a picture from last week when I had long hair. Yeah, this is a good haircut, but a short one. So something about my education. I have done my master's in advanced accountancy. I come from a finance background. I am a certified technical analyst from Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange. Um, yeah, I'm based near Mumbai. I work as a stock market trader right now. As for my collection journey, I started as a kid collecting Pokemon Tazos. So you get those Tazos in a pack of Cheetos there, and it started fascinating me. I started collecting them. Then I went to cards, the Pokemon cards, and WWE cards, thing like that. One thing happened, the chain started, and after that I went into stamp collections. Then I matured into coin collections, and then finally I landed into collecting banknotes. So this one, I am pretty sure and hopeful, is permanent for me. So it's been like 8 years right now that I have been a banknote collector, and from past 4 years I have been a very serious banknote collector. I have taken a very serious approach for this hobby. I am also a member of collector groups like THC, the one who is hosting me right now. Please do subscribe to our channel here, and other groups like OFB, international groups like International Banknote Society and American Numismatic Society. So, the thing you are here for. This date, Sunday, 20th June 1914. This Sunday is not a regular Sunday or a holiday or a relaxing day that we usually consider Sunday is. This is one of the most historically important days. On 20th June 1914, Archduke Ferdinand and his wife from Austria were assassinated. And this became the direct cause, the immediate cause for the start of the Great War. Although there were other reasons which were brewing up, but this particular was the immediate reason for the World War One to begin. So, what comes to our mind when we talk about war? Usually, we just picturize battlefields, guns, cannons, loss of life, things like that, which do happen. But there is also an unfortunate impact on the regular or daily life of common people. One of those subtle, one of those small changes which happen, the effect which is this, is on the shortage of change. So the shortage of change, what is the change? Low denomination notes or coins, which is used for small transaction. Those are the changes what I am talking about. So how in a war situation do these change disappear? So one of the thing is hoarding. What happens is these coins are made up of metal, and people feel that these coins have actual some intrinsic value to it. A paper money has actually no value to it. It's just a piece of paper. It's not like we are like in 1914. It was not a gold back currency there. So Germany could back its currency with gold, and it actually went high. So there was no reason for people to hold on to a piece of paper. At least metal, if they could collect a large enough number of metallic coins, they could at least sell that in scrap and get some money out of it for the metal. So hoarding started. Silver prices, again, precious metals in general, there's a history that whenever there's a crisis, the prices for precious metals like silver, they start rising. I'll give you a small example. Like during this COVID pandemic, the prices of gold have shot up for more than 15% in the last 3 months. So this is just one example how these prices go up. And then there's hedging. So hedging is basically people keep their money in, like I said, precious metals or coins made out of precious metals. So again, in such crisis time, there is inflation. So today, if you have a 10 rupee note, and suddenly prices for commodities increase and they go to 12 rupees, correct? Now you can't buy that commodity. But instead, if you had a coin which had silver content of 10 rupees, and the next day, when prices for the commodity rises, the prices for the silver will also rise to at least 12 rupees or maybe more. So you can still buy that product you want. So again, this is a financial concept of hedging, and that's the main reason people started hoarding coins. Weaponry, okay. Apart from the precious metals, the regular metals from which coins were made back then were copper, nickel. These metals were diverted to the wall cauldrons. They were used for making weaponry. So the government themselves stopped minting them for some time and started taking them back from the market and melting them and use them for making weapons. Scars. Now this is again a very interesting reason. So uh, there is a game. There's a gambling game called Skat. It's a 3 card game, and in that game, you need small coins to place your bets. So because of that, the gambler started holding all these small changes as well. So all these reasons, started the coin started disappearing from the market, and the demand was high due to poverty and other things like war happen, prices go up, people lose their jobs, things like that happen. So people don't have excess money to spend. They start spending small value currency, and the need for such small denomination increases. Poverty increases, there are beggars out there, so you usually just give them some coins rather than giving them the high denomination banknotes. You give them some spare change, so that they can spend, because for them that is more than enough. Like they have to make their living out of that. So the demand for these changes also increased. Again, the reason why I'm emphasizing so much on the shortage of change is because it's very important. Why? Right now, if you have to pay someone in a fractional denomination like some rupee and some paisa left, you can actually pay them via digital currency or using digital modes, and it's very easy for us. But at that time, that was not the case. And right now, there's not a lot of products that we get in such small denomination prices. But at that time, when the currency was a bit powerful, the sub denomination was used a lot. So change was of very importance in this time. So finally, birth of Notgelds came in July 31st, 1914, in Bremen, Germany. The first Notgeld was issued. So here I'll explain Notgeld once again. So it's a German word in which not means necessity and Geld means money. So this is basically necessity money. So for the like instead the use of coins, they started using these small pieces of money. And usually when it first started, it was made on paper, very plain uniface, like just one sided printing, and it was hand signed because it was just targeted for a small population. Okay, like if a local municipality issues it, so it's basically only for the town residents there, so that they can have that change between themselves. circulated between themselves. And if a local shopkeeper issued it, it's because he doesn't has change to give back. He will instead write a note on it and give them, so that next time they come in and encash it. And the authorities, this is how I categorize it, or how I see how Notgelds are to be classified. This is not an official definition, but this is how I categorize them. So official issues are those which were permitted by the German government to the states and towns to print Notgelds. Like the government, the local municipalities had to take permission from the government that, we are in short of change, let us print some Notgelds to, take care of the situation which has been created due to shortage of change. So they were allowed. These are the official Notgelds. The semi-official ones, you can say, are the one which are issued by the local authority. So they have a element of being official, but at the same time they didn't have permission from the central government. So that's why I call them semi-official. And then there's private. So private Notgelds is basically, let's take an example. There's a ration shop owner, or let's say a supermarket. So there, if you don't have a change, they will issue their own sort of change to you, so that you can come back and, pay in that change as well. And if you have a lot of change collected, you can just take it back to them and get a bigger note from them, bigger denomination note. But all this at that time, like I mentioned here, was printed on paper, cheap quality paper. So the question arises, why did they have to use odd materials here? My presentation, like I said, it's based on such emergency money which was printed not on paper, something odd. So why did they had to use odd materials for this purpose? So one of the reasons was sustainability. Like I said, it had to be used among a small group of people, so it changed hand quickly. And there are studies saying out there that, for example, a higher denomination note changes hand less frequently compared to smaller denomination note. So the smaller denomination notes changes hand continuously, and it had to be rough and tough for them. So for example, this is a 50 beer pfennig. So for all non-collectors, the German currency at that time was mark, and the sub denomination was pfennigs. I'll give you an example. So rupee is the main currency, and it is divided into fractional units of paisa. Similarly, here it was mark and it was divided into pfennigs. So this is a a plywood note, 50 beer pfennigs. This is a private note girl. It was printed by a pub. So this was 50 beer pfennigs. Okay. And then there were mobility issues as well. Not a lot of cases of this were being heard, but still some cases were present where, due to war, due to other things, the transport of good quality papers with security marks, everything was affected. So they had to think of other options, like, if not paper, on which material can we print? Correct? So you can actually see a lot of cheap quality Notgelds out there as well, on cheap quality paper with no security marks. But some local authorities opted otherwise, and instead of paper, they started using something else. Another important reason was source of revenue. Okay, what would you do if you come across a change or a coin which is made up of cloth or wood or some other interesting material? You would obviously try to keep some, like, keep in mind it's change, it's like a small coin something, and it doesn't hold that much value currency wise. So what you will do is, you obviously keep some for your collection, right? Oh, this is good, this is something, let's keep them aside. Even if you are not a collector, if you come across something so absurd, so weird, you will obviously keep some aside, right? So what the bank started noticing, or the local authority started noticing, was people started keeping them aside. So they also added a redemption date, an expiry date for this note guild, that after this date, this note guild is not valid. So you have to come to the bank and exchange it for the new note guilds you are issuing. Or if you have a good quantity of those note guilds, so we can issue you a higher denomination note in exchange for that. Correct? So they took notice of that, and eventually they started printing such beautiful note guilds on such odd materials. and people didn't actually use it. So, and once the expiry date passes, nobody came to exchange it. It was just profit for the bank and the local authorities. So it went to such extent that people from other towns would message people from one particular town that we need your Notgelds for our collection. They would write to them, they would pay them money, they would send money in envelopes, and expect them to send them the odd material Notgelds. And these local authority guys were smart. They would purposefully delay their dispatchment. So they would send it once it is dispatched to another, like, just before expiry, they would send it. So that by the time it reaches there, they don't have any option to send it back and encash it if they don't like it. In fact, there were cases where a lot of collectors, this happened, a lot of collectors from United States, UK, even India, I couldn't find any, but there have been documentation saying that people from this country also wrote extensively to this small German town saying that we want your Notgelds, and they used to pay upfront. So this had become a major source of revenue while other businesses were affected due to the war situation. Another interesting reason is the morale. So it was very important for the German local authorities to have the mindset of their local people boosted, the morale high. So this particular Notgeld here, it is made up of cloth, and there's a design of a turnip there. So this design was actually submitted by a war soldier who was on the lines of fire, and he designed it and sent it here, and they used it there. So this has a good story to it, but this actually boosts the morals of the people. And the image above it, that's the image of an advertisement that was issued by a city called Bielefeld. So they are advertising here the different types of Notgeld they are going to issue. So that generated curiosity, and then they used to send these pamphlets in other towns as well. So people from other towns would eventually order their Notgelds there. Okay. Another interesting reason is advertisement. You can see here, this particular Notgelds are made up of silk 25 mark. This is from Bielefeld. So Bielefeld is a town in Germany which was famous for its weaving. It was known as the weavers' town. So they started printing Notgelds on cloth. Pretty obvious, right? They would choose that. So on that, if you see, both the Notgelds look similar, but the top line there, I have zoomed them and pasted the image below. You can see only that line is different. So that is the name of the firms, the local textile firms. So in this way, they also started advertising on the Notgelds and generating revenue from that as well. Another form was publicity of local industry and local skills, and also matching it with local availability. For example, this is a Notgeld from Huddersfield. So what Huddersfield thought was they were actually in dire need of a emergency money, of a Notgeld. Now they said that it should be something which is available locally and easily. So they didn't have to look too much. They just went into their woods. They had a very flourishing industry of furnitures and fixtures. So they went down in the forest, cut some wood, and here you have Notgelds made from plywood. Yeah. So this also boosted this. The quality of these are so good. I'll show like one example of all of these at the end of the presentation. The quality is so good, so that you wonder, yeah, these are so good quality plywood here. And that actually boosted, that helped them get orders for their furniture market, the local furniture market, from outside the town. Even from inside the town, people started buying locally. So that was another technique, and that was another reason that they started using odd materials. So now we have seen the war happened, and then how it had an impact on the change. And because of lack of coins and the smaller denomination Notgelds came into making. Then we also saw why odd material Notgelds were used. Now let's see the interesting part here, the types of different odd material which were used. So fabric. Here, this is again from Bielefeld. It's made up of jute. Jute is the material which is used for making gunny bags. Yeah, and this is used for making money. You can imagine the app, like how, surprising it is, weird it is. And linen, so this is a different type of fabric. The photo here is of a famous poet. On the backs it shows mountains and the place where the poet used to live, and a couple of couplets of his poem is also mentioned there. Then again, velvet was used as well. So a very soft quality material was used, very premium quality material was used on this odd shaped, oval shaped note. Again, from Bielefeld, the weaver's town, as we said, and I'm sorry, and the silk note which I showed you earlier. So it's a 25 mark note made out of silk. Plywood again. So this is not limited just to Germany. So this was German and this is Austrian plywood here. So you can see the fancy shapes they made it into, so that it makes it more appealing and attractive for the people. But otherwise, the printing on it is very basic, because again, we have to also remember this is emergency money, and also this is small denominations. You can't put so much value to it. Like you can't spend so much value creating it. I mean, you can't spend, like here it's given 50 heller. You can't spend 60 hellers to create a Notgeld of 50 hellers. It wouldn't make sense, right? It will be a loss to the exchequer. So keeping that in mind, the printing was minimal on the wood part, but otherwise still brilliant, still looks so good and feels good to hold it in your hand. Leather. So this is again something very interesting. Leather, the thin leather one, which is on the left, it was used to make gloves. That leather was used to make gloves. And now, when such times of crisis were there, again the local authorities, in together with the local companies, thought like this should be something local. The material that they use should represent locality. So they used this glove making leather for making money. Crazy, right? And then there was thick leather. So this is like a very premium quality of leather. So this particular town, Posnex, thought, why not, represent our local tannery, local leather industry in a very royal, rich manner. So this was very premium quality leather. Right now, I don't think so. There are many tanneries there. My research says only one such famous tannery is still there in Ostervik, which is on the left, in that town. But earlier there were many, and it was really famous for its leather products. Another very interesting form of leather that was used was shoe leather. You heard it right, and you read it right. It's shoe leather. So the shoe sole, this leather is basically used for making a shoe sole. So what they did was they printed a note on it, and they said, in case when it expires, until that you could, you don't exchange it, or it becomes valueless due to the inflation, you can at least stuck it on your shoes and stitch it and use it, right? So this, they gave it an additional utility. And then you can see there's a woman's heel leather and men's heel leather shoe as well in 25 Pfennig and 50 Pfennig Notgelds. So, like, in case you don't want to exchange it or it gets expired, you could just stack it below your heel, stitch it, and have some good pair of shoes for yourself. Aluminum foil. Now, these delicate notes, like my mom used to wrap my chapatis in aluminum foil and give it to me in my tiffin. And now these are used to print notes. So on the left, you can see a 500 mark aluminum foil note printed in Lauterburg, Germany. So it was printed by a factory, aluminum factory, and used as a payment to its workers. And on the right is a hyperinflation era 100 billion mark banknote, and it's a silver aluminum foil, silver colored aluminum foil. So there were gold colored, purple colored aluminum foil, green color aluminum foil. A few varieties were also printed in these. These are particularly a bit scarce or rarer to find. Cardboard. So next time your Amazon parcel arrives, just remember that there were notes which were printed on that material. So on the left, you can see a corrugated cardboard paper, thin with all the corrugations and segregations on it. So that was again used to make Notgelds. And on the right, you can see a very thick, strong cardboard which was used to circulate small notes. So the denomination is 1 mark here. The other variants include this parchment paper. So parchment paper is more like butter paper. It's transparent, but it has some industrial use to it. So even that was used to print Notgelds. And on the right is lacquer paper. It is a type of printed paper, colored paper. Even that was used. So it beautifies the Notgeld actually. You can see it looks very beautiful. I'll show you some examples later, but it looks so beautiful that people wouldn't want to spend it. That was the whole purpose that started revolving around it later. Earlier, it was a need to create such Notgelds, but later they found a business out of it. So that was there. Uh, this again a very interesting material here. So this was a board and like a cardboard, and on that 4 coins made out of wood and coated with wax were stuck. So if you see the total here, there's a 10 heller coin. So it's from Austria where the currency is heller. Okay. So it has a 10 heller coin, 20 heller coin, 50 heller coin, 80 heller coin, which totals up to 160. But if you see carefully in the center of that board, you can see it has written 200 there with pencil there. So if you use it as an entire note, you can use it as 200. But if you want to use the change, the coins, you can only spend up to 160 hellers. So that is the premium you had to pay for using coins. So again, I'll give you an example. So this is Austria, and same thing happened in Germany as well. So in Germany, the postmen themselves used to accept coins worth 5 marks as 5.3 marks. Let's assume you want to make a payment of 5.3 marks. If you give him a 5 mark note, and then you also have to give him the 0.30 mark in change. But if you give him the entire 5 mark in coins, he would accept that as the entire 5.3 mark payment. So the premium thing started back then. Yeah. So even in this case, if you passed on this entire note to somebody, so if you passed on this entire note to somebody, it would go as 200 hellers. But if you wanted to buy something smaller, so you had to, chip it off and spend it. And then there are encapsulated stamps. So again, here you can see cheap quality metal which were recycled from bottle caps, car spare parts, etc. And then they were used to make a capsule type of thing. And on that, inside that, a stamp was stuck. So that stamp was stuck inside that, and then it was circulated as currency. But these were most of them were private Notgelds. The number of such encapsulated stamp Notgelds issued by the local authorities are few. It was mostly done by private authorities. The other materials that exist are the porcelain ones. A lot of common Notgelds can be found in the porcelain material, and the very interesting one are the compressed coal dust ones. So these particular compressed coal dust material, coal dust Notgelds, have a very interesting background story to it. So what happened was a company named Condrath. Yeah. So the owner issued these Notgelds as quarter payment to the employee. So if an employee has a payment of 4,000 mark, he would get 3,000 mark in normal regular currency and 1,000 mark in these Notgelds. So he sadistically remarked and said that by the time I give this to you, if they become worthless due to hyperinflation, or you couldn't exchange it by the time of expiry, you can just throw it into your fireplace and have a good warm winter. So this was the unfortunate situation in Germany where inflation killed the value of money so fast. So these coal dust. So it was made out of coal dust, which was compressed and packed together to make this Notgelds. Again, these are also not very easy to come by. For example, the 1,000 mark, around 3,500 of these were made, and the 100 and 500, not more than 2,500 of these were made as well. So the post utility expiry, as you can see here, These are the cloth and fabric Notgelds which I showed earlier from Bielefeld. So after the war or after the expiry, when people really wanted money, or like now it was the time to dispose their collections of, right? Because they were needing money for day-to-day transactions. So rather than spending money, the one kind of money which they had kept aside earlier, they started using that. So you can see a pretty dress on the left there, which was shown using Bielefeld cloth, the notes. And on the right there's a cool jacket there, again that's velvet, and the bottom one is velvet as well, and that is a pillow cover. And in the center you can see how a bed entirely full of pillow covers, tablecloths, etc. is there, which is entirely made up of Bielefeld notes, cloth notes and silk notes. And like we discussed earlier, the coal compressed Notgelds, many of them met their fate and into the fireplace, and the shoe leather ones ended up on the bottom of the shoes, being heels and shoe soles. So very few of them are remaining now. Actually, the shoe leather ones, only 1,200 of them were issued for each category: the shoe sole, the two types of heels. But many of them actually met their destined fate and became shoes. So prohibition started in July 17, 1992. Thing was, the use of Notgelds actually got out of hand. It got so out of hand that people stopped actually using the main currency, the German marks, and the one which was issued by the central government. And they started switching more and more to the local Notgelds. So there was a prohibition order which was issued by the German government on 17 July 1992. But that didn't work. By that time, Germany had lost the war. The major reparations were due in according to the Treaty of Versailles to France, and they couldn't pay that. And in that case, a lot of things were seized. Factories, industries were seized by France, which kicked Germany into hyperinflation. And when this crisis, monetary crisis started, again the entire thing was messed up. Notgelds started again. After that, they tried to fix it using a method called the fixed value money. So what they did was they first pegged the currency, matched the currency to a fixed exchange rate against US dollar, which was at that time considered a very stable and strong currency. So at that time, they kept an exchange rate of one US dollar is equals to 4.2 German mark. But that actually didn't work. How would it work? See, tomorrow if we get up and say that my exchange rate is this attached to the strongest currency, it doesn't work like that. People have to have faith in that currency. It should be accepted internationally. You can't just set your exchange rate directly. So it didn't work. It collapsed again. They started fixed value money in other forms, like they started using notes of say 5 pack of breads, 2 units of electricity, 10 liters of water. So they started fixing their currency with that. Eventually, even that failed. And then finally, on 20th November 1923, the Rentenmarks were introduced. Now, again, the question: why would people introduce, like, have faith in a Rentenmark? Just the name change? No. The thing was, earlier it used to be currencies like gold-backed currency or silver-backed currency, where the government would pay up something, so that would happen. But this was not the case here. Here they actually backed up the Rentenmarks with land. So 4% of the land of Germany was assigned to these Rentenmarks here. So now people had faith in it that it is backed by something physical, something intrinsic. Also, the other thing was that people were actually fed up. People were really fed up of changing currencies, of using this odd Notgelds. They wanted something stable, something more, you know, it, which had value to it, and they can stick to it and lead a normal life. So finally, they accepted Rentenmarks. The Notgelds were ditched, but again, unfortunately, this didn't stay for a long time, and eventually, things happened, and it led to World War II in 1939. And by that time, Notgelds started again. So I will limit myself to this, and this is how the end of Notgelds for me, the for my collection comes here. So how did the hobby develop? Now I'd like to mention that it was a very advanced hobby. Even back then, as you can see, here's a poster of an odd material Notgeld exhibition. You can see it right here. It says 1997. So even in 1997, there was an exhibit specially for these odd material Notgelds, not for Notgelds entirety, only for odd material Notgelds. So this hobby developed, very fast, and the credit goes to the man on the right, Dr. Ranald Keller. You can say like father of emergency money or father of Notgelds. So he was the one who put so much time, so much dedication to this thing. You can say he did everything possible to record all types of variants of Notgeld possible. So this man single-handedly has recorded more than 1.5 lakh variants of Notgelds. Obviously, most of them are paper Notgelds, but a few thousand, couple of thousand are odd material as well. So he did that, and you can see him holding some new Notgelds which were issued, and he's trying to see the design if it's good or not. So he used to write articles about new issues, and then the hobby became so advanced that he also had to create a blacklist. So if there's any dispute between a dealer or a collector, this guy would mention it there, and if the dealer remains fault, he would blacklist the dealer for some time. And if a particular local authority is charging more to issue its Notgeld. For example, if the face value which is written on the Notgeld is 1 mark, and just because it is odd material and they know they can encash it from the collectors, they issue it for say 5 marks. So Dr. Arnold Keller would immediately, write it in his journal and blacklist them, saying they are just trying to rip off the hobby, the collectors. And also, it doesn't make sense to issue something at such a high face value, high premium. Okay, so this is how he managed the hobby, shaped the hobby. A lot of books from his articles are made right now. And then eventually in 1968 something, he sold his entire collection to the Bundesbank in Germany, and he had collected around 1,08,600 varieties of Notgeld, all different. And it's assumed that there are around 1,60,000 different varieties of just German and Austrian Notgelds. So that was it, and he sold it to Bundesbank later, and later he was just a preacher and evangelist of this hobby. So my particular reasons to collect these things is the oddity. As we saw, these are odd material Notgelds, like candle. Candle is made out of wax, not notes. You don't make notes out of candle, out of wax. So leather is used for shoes, is used for your jackets. You don't make money out of it. So this kind of oddity is what attracts me more to collect this. And the history, obviously, the entire thing, we saw how the war happened. There was a shortage of change, there was a need, there was an emergency, then locals thought of some good ideas, and then they came up with this. So all those interesting historical aspects which make me want to collect these even more. Limited availability. Now what happens is, as we discussed, these, you have to keep in mind, these Notgelds were issued for local communities. These were also issued by small shopkeepers, by private firms, for local employees, for small population, things like that. So the number of which they were printed are very low, and the number which survived are even lower. So to hunt them and to collect them is a big challenge, which I don't feel like saying no to, and I'm ready to take it head on. So I just love the challenge it puts forward to find them and collect them. The variety, like I said, there are more than 1,60,000 varieties of normal Notgelds. Odd material can again be a couple of few thousands there. And now this is something for our collector friends out there. I consider this a wholesome hobby, a wholesome theme. Why? Because only in Notgelds you can find everything that you collect. For example, you can find uncut sheets, you can find folders, official issued folders, you can find specimens, You can find commemorative notes, you can find errors, you can find trial notes, you can find proof notes, and whatnot. You can find mismatched serial numbers, you can find anything in this. So I feel this is a very wholesome theme which gives exposure to a lot of things which a person has to juggle between some notes of different countries, but this particular theme covers it all. And as for the future prospects, like I said, due to the limited availability, these are hard to come by. So, like I started 4 years back, at that time, some of the note guides were still available in market. They used to come up frequently, and now they are not coming up in the market for sale. Slowly, these are disappearing, and these are going into the collector albums and sitting in the cupboard. I'm sorry. So, eventually, I feel that these are going to be pretty hard to find, and I feel right now they are a bit undervalued, and the future looks bright financially for them as well. One of the other reasons to collect, like I mentioned earlier, was the concept of money was challenged. People were simply not ready to put their faith in a piece of paper which was not backed up by anything. They either wanted something intrinsic, uh, let's say a metal or anything which had some value to it, or they wanted their currency to be backed up by something. So in this case, here's an example of the fixed value money I showed. So this was a note saying 1,500 grams of black bread. So this is how a note guide was issued earlier, the fixed ratio one. And one of the other important reason is symbolism. Now, when we see times of war, at that time, like I said, the first note guild, which was very plain, it had no design to it. And now here we can see a very interesting, beautiful looking note guild. So many of the odd material note guild do look like this, and even a single dot on them has a meaning to it. A lot of thought was put into it. I'll give you one very small example. Now, this is a note guild from Bielefeld, and now I've zoomed out the top area there, and you can see here an animal orchestra. So what this is in the town they had a music hall, and now in times of war, people didn't really had much time to enjoy music because they were struggling with the day-to-day course. So that town music hall was converted into an auction place for farm animals. So they have beautifully represented that like an orchestra of animals. So earlier they used to go for orchestra, and now it's a auction place for farm animals. So this is the animal orchestra. So like that, almost every note has so much detail to it that this big presentation I can give for every individual note guild. It has so much detail, so much thought into it. Another reason to make them such thoughtful was so that people actually collect them more, so that they don't come up to the local municipalities again for redemption. The challenges that I face while collecting are a lot. The authenticity. Now, thing is, when somebody comes up to you with a piece of wood with something printed on it, you don't know how genuine that is. Was that money that was used earlier, or that is something very new? So you actually, it's very difficult to differentiate between fake and a new one. Fortunately, there are not a lot of forgeries yet in most of the notebooks. There are a few couple of notebooks in which a lot of forgery has been made, but till now not many are there. It's very difficult to discern between the two. The language, so this was issued in Germany and Austria, where the primary language was German. So all the note guides have things written on it on German only, and proper German, because this was for local Germans, especially rural areas, small towns, things like that. So it was proper German. So everything is in Germany, even the literature that was written by Arnold Keller and many other people, it is completely in German. So for person from other side of the world who doesn't know German, it becomes difficult to know more about it because the culture is very different and the language is again absolutely very different. So learning more about node guilds becomes a bit difficult for me. Greedy entrepreneurs, no, I'm not talking about the dealers who sell me these. Greedy entrepreneurs are the ones who back then in 1920s when node guilds were issued, they started printing note guilds in the name of fake towns. Now it's See, Germany was a big country, Austria was a big country. Nobody knew how many towns were there. There was no internet to just Google up. So what they would do is they would create a fake town, and then they would print a note guild in that name and sell it to the collectors. So again, differentiating between what was fake, what was issued by these fake fraudsters, and what was official. So again, that's a blur line, especially if I don't know the language. And availability, like I said, the availability is getting lower and lower every day. And in India, it's almost nil. You can find them abroad, like in Germany, in even in US, in Austria, but finding them in India is a real challenge. I have almost never seen any dealer selling these items here. So I have to source them from Germany, which is again a bit troublesome. You have to contact them, you have to get it here, you have to arrange a payment, and then it comes via a shipment, and a lot of risks are involved around it. So it's a bit of a hassle sourcing them to India. And the community for this is very small. In India is almost nil. It's handful. I can count on my fingertips that people I know who are serious collectors of odd material note guides. And even like if you compare it to other kinds of hobby, the number of collectors for this thing is very small because it has local German history to it. So most probably the people who are interested are Germans and German locals. So and they collect note guilds of their particular towns. So the community is small, interaction is not that much. And price guide, now if somebody comes with me with a unique piece of currency, old note guild, how do I know what price should I pay for it? So there is no definite price point or a reference point for me to take an estimate of what price should I pay for this. So there, the last price catalog that was printed was in 2005. It's been 15 years. After that, there has been no revision to it. So we don't know what kind of price we have to pay. We have to estimate it based on what it is being sold for by multiple sellers, take an average, take an estimate out of it, and then make a judgment. So again, that's a very really big challenge. Apart from these note guilds, there are a lot of other things I collect. So it is, you can see it here, the related themes, other odd material banknotes. Apart from the German and Austrian note guilds, there were other instances where odd material were also used. So I collect them as well. Stamps on banknotes. Like I said, people had almost lost faith in the paper currency. So they wanted something more intrinsic to it. So the local authorities started issuing notes which had stamps on it, postage stamps. So postage stamps had value because you can just rip it off and use it on a letter to send your envelope somewhere. So it had that value to it. So postage stamps were actually something which worked for a while. People started using that kind of notes. So I collect them. And money on unusual item, like I said, there was sometimes shortage of paper or people were looking for locally available material. So they recycled the paper. They used old calendars, playing cards, anything made out of paper. They took it and printed notes on the back and used it. So I also collect that kind of theme. And then I collect the other themes from this, which is not related, is world banknotes representing India. So people always say that why do you not collect Indian notes? You are an Indian guy. I say I do collect it, but I collect the world notes which have the Indian element in them. For example, Indian languages, Indian culture displayed on the note. So I do collect them. And other world notes, like the child in me wants to collect everything, wants to have all the notes in their world, and I don't want to let that child die. So parallelly, if I like any other note, I find that it's a good price, the beauty of the note is good, condition is good, I'll just go for it. So thank you, and I'll just show some notes from my collection to you now, and after that we'll be open for Q&A. So here, this is a proof note. There's a reflection here, but this is the best I can show you because If I touch it or something, like remove it, it's going to get damaged. So this is a proof note here. Proof note is the one which is designed to use before it is put into issue. These are the notes which are put a designer's plate. So if this gets approved, after this banknotes are printed using the same plate. So this is the proof note made out of gold aluminum foil, and this is from Teningen. I hope my pronunciation of German towns are right, but pardon me if it's not. And then I'll show some more interesting pieces here. These are aluminum foil Notgelds from Lauterberg. You can see the back. This is the factory. You can see the design here. This is the factory. Then we have interesting leather pieces here. You can see. So these are made out of very thin leather. And another example here is the point I was trying to mention earlier, that the hobby of collection went so high at that time. It was so advanced and everybody was so interested that a note guild was issued showing children collecting stamps and note guilds. So this note guild shows children that are collecting note guilds. They have an album. They are opening up a letter that came from post office from another municipality which had note guild. So they are opening that up. So this is a 50 pfennig note which shows children collecting note guilds. Apart from that, there's a lot of stuff to show here. This again is a very interesting piece. This right here shows 15 pfennigs. But why would people believe in such a small piece of paper? Why is it worth 15 pfennigs? So here, if you see the interesting part, if you open it up, there is a stamp of 15 pfennig inside. Here, you can see it. So because of this stamp, people would have faith in this particular note guild. Pretty interesting, right? And then we'll just, scroll through it quickly. Just some of my albums here. You can see this is how I arranged it, and here I have tagged it, cataloged it, all the varieties here. You can see it. So these are all cloth varieties. So this particular album has notes of all the different cloth varieties that were there from Bielefeld and other states. I'll just show one fixed exchange rate issue. So here you can see these are two similar looking note guilds. This is fixed exchange rate. Here it says 5 by $420 is equals to 5 pfennig. That was the exchange rate. So this one is made out of linen. It's a fabric note, and this particular one is made out of paper. So the reason they issued both was the paper one would actually resolve the issue of shortage of change, and the cloth one would actually be the one that goes into the collector's album. So you can see how things were different. So now let's just open up things for Q&A. I'm pretty sure you guys might be having a lot of questions right there, and maybe if I have time, we will show some more. Let's start with the questions. Hi Sheetal Kumar ji. Hi Kunal. Regarding the 1.5, can you tell more? Okay, so till now, the documented varieties of emergency notes of Germany, only Germany, not even Austria. Austria has a different count. So 1,60,000 varieties have been documented yet. There are chances that there are more than that varieties. So you have to understand that there were many local towns who issued Notgelds continuously. And then when there were times of inflation, all the town had to issue notes so fast. I'll give you an example of how cruel the inflation was. For example, you went into a coffee shop and then you ordered a coffee. The coffee was for 10 marks. By the time you finished drinking up and you kept your cup of coffee, asked for the bill, it would have become 20 marks. That was the speed the inflation was curbing the economy. So that is why a lot of notes had to be printed, and those were considered note guilds as well because they were issued by the towns in times of emergency. Okay, The next question, please. Also, what was the backing or promise that the primate issuers put? So there was no backing you in general to the private Notgelds. It was just that because it was issued in a locality, for example, if a shopkeeper issued it, you know that the shopkeeper is there, and you know he would take it back again instead of money, because it had usually their sign on it or the firm's stamp on it. And in case of odd material, they try to make sure that there is some intrinsic value to it as well. So, for example, a coal note geld, like the issuer said, you could just throw it off and warm yourself off in the winter. Hope this answers your question. I'm sorry. So odd material banknotes were issued by a lot of countries. I can give you example of say Russia. In Russia, there was a time a private company had issued note made out of walrus skin. Then in Mexico, there's a note made out of oil paper, oil waxed paper. Yeah. And then Antigua and Barbuda issued commemorative banknotes made out of gold and silver. So I have those in my collections as well, but that is not part of this particular thing. Yes. Oddest. I think walrus skin counts as a pretty odd, so that is from Russia. But if you consider the Notgeld one, the shoe sole leather I mentioned earlier, that was made from cow hide, cow skin. So I feel that that is one of the oddest one, and also the foil ones. I mean, it pretty much makes no sense about how we can use them in general life. So that was pretty odd for me. So there is no fixed count. And again, this was a surprise, but I am working with a few other collectors so that we can produce a definitive guide. There is a definitive guide which has included, the varieties of odd material, but it's very scattered. Some have considered German note gelds, but not in its entirety. Then some have considered Austrians, but not in its entirety. Like they have missed things like prisoners of war issue, things like that. And then such guide for other countries is not available. So we are working on that to make a comprehensive list so that it could be available to others and people pick this up hobby more often. This particular theme. As of today, I'm not sure, but I don't think so. Any country issuing it officially, but the latest issue I feel was from Transnistria, where plastic coins were made. Small coins of plastic were put into the circulation by that country. So that is the recent most example. And some years before that, gold and silver notes of Antigua and Barbuda were issued. They were obviously issued in albums and for collectors, but they were legal tenders. So if we consider that, because they are a legal tender, so you can say gold and silver banknotes were also issued very recently. So the Nazi regime, actually, the thing was they were mostly focused on the other aspects. The currency aspect was not taken much into consideration. But yeah, I would like to say before the Nazi regime, when these note girls were there, the entrance of Rentenmark, which stopped the more issuing of such odd material note guilds and the regular note guilds as well, because people started putting faith in it. So there was a person, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce his name. It's a long name and it's German, so I apologize for that. I cannot pronounce his name. So that person was involved very well. He was a very decorated economist, and he introduced the Rentenmarks and change the entire thing, give a good route to the German economy, and then he retired. But then again in World War II, when there was economic crisis, Hitler called him back and made him the chief of the German Finance Commission and everything, and he was again managing it. So what happened was, after the he was also involved in a plot to kill Hitler because he didn't supported the Nazi regime. So the Nazis caught him and put him in jail. After the Nazis were defeated, the Allies who defeated Nazis caught him and put him in jail again because he had supported the Nazis and helped them get out of the economic crisis. So this is how the whole situation was dealt in. But is there any catalog? Absolutely, there is a catalog for that. Bondes de Art Notgelds. Again, my pronunciation would be wrong, but there's a 9-volume book, such thick books of 500, 300, 500 odd pages, and such 9 volumes just for German Notgelds are there, and that too, they are not all inclusive. So there are books out there, there are lots of books out there, but you can't say that it covers everything. The old 500 rupee notes, if you have it in uncirculated and good condition, like with no folds, definitely worth keeping. In my collection, rarest, as in, I do have a Notgeld which is made printed on a postcard, and only five such Notgelds were issued. So I earlier had a 25 a Notgeld which was issued 25 number in 25 numbers, but I let go of it, and I have recently acquired a postcard Notgeld of which the issue quantity is 5. So they just had those 5 Notgelds, and to attract collectors as well, they had issued very less of them. So that would be one of my rarest. Only 5 such exist. Sheetal Bhai, the walrus skin Notgeld I do not have. Okay, aren't most of these noodles sourced from animal perishable? Is there a danger of this forever? Okay, so for the walrus skin thing, I am not an expert on that. I can't comment because I don't have in my collection. Recently, it went in an auction for more than $25,000 and in US dollars, and in a better condition, fully graded, a variety in it went for more than $50,000 as well. I am yet to acquire that for my collection, so I don't have any problem storing them. But if I get one, I would do anything to keep them in intact condition. And as for the other leather materials which were made from cow hide and everything, yes, there is a chance over time. If you see that even the images that I used were pretty dark, but that was not how they were originally issued. They had a shine on them which eventually loses. But apart from that, you can store it very well. Just you know do not store it in a very humid place or in direct heat. That's it. Just make sure you are not putting anything else on it. Absolutely. I have made a very big list of such notes. There are a lot of countries which had notes representing Indian languages, and this is not the correct presentation to discuss that, but you can get in touch with me later and we can discuss more on that, brother. How many odd material notebooks you have come across? I have not kept a count because there are a lot of minor varieties in it. Just to give you a quick example, here I will show you one notebook here. So these all these notebooks look same, correct? But the thing with this notebook is every notebook is entirely same except for one line, and that is a Bible verse. So they have different Bible verses on them, and apart from that, there are same. Then in the same Bible verse, there are notebooks which have difference of 2 or 3 millimeter variety, because again, the production was not that accurate and on the precise on point. but then they have considered it as different varieties. So it's really difficult. I can't keep a count on it, and I haven't tried it yet. But very soon, I'm trying to document it. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Some of them do have serial numbers, and in fact, many of them have serial numbers, but many don't have as well. So there is no definite answers to them. Some have, some don't have. There are examples of Notgelds, same Notgelds, some of which have serial numbers and some of which don't have serial number. So in Germany, they are called control numbers, KN, control numbers. So there are many Notgelds with control numbers and many Notgelds without control numbers, odd material ones. No, I usually don't, but I'll give you again an example of what I have to, the tricks I have to use to save, save them. So here is an example of the encapsulated postage stamps. So you can see how I have stored them. So this is a plastic capsule, and in that I have kept one single bubble wrap, and in that I have stored this particular note get. And then these are again made out of uh, cardboard here, and then there is Notgeld in that. So this is how I have to store them. Most of the other materials are pretty rough and tough, so you can just keep them in a good quality plastic like this. So Kirk, this is again related to German Notgelds, but I'll still answer your question. Earliest form of modern day currency notes were in general issued in late 1700s by Bank of Hindustan in India. So yes, I would appreciate if people restrict the comments to this, because if you have any queries apart from that, feel free to get in touch with me after the presentation. I would appreciate if we restrict to the topic aluminum foil such delicate materials. Okay, so a lot of such varieties were issued, Akansha, and I'll give you an example. Let's say there is no count available for such pieces. These are proofs. So some of them survived from, you can't put a count on it because hardly any of them have survived here. And as for the data, it's not available in case of the aluminum foil ones. In some other, for example, the coal note gels, 3,500 were issued. In leather note gels, 1,200 were issued. In some cloth note gels, the number is given. In postcards, there were 5. So there are data available, but not for every one of them. Thank you, Ravindra ji. Yes, if there are any more questions, please let me know, or we can just conclude this session. Thank you so much for attending in such large numbers. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, because if you want to stay in touch, I'll come up with new presentation. Other fellow collectors are coming up with presentations every week. So Krishnamurti ji, every item is precious to me in my collection. I can't let go of even the commonest note, and I, save it like it's the last drop of water on earth. So every note is precious, and if you go value wise, uh, I really haven't given it a thought. I have to check which one is the most expensive one I have ever bought. So they were issued for both the purposes. The thing is, I will just give you an example here. I will show you a piece. This one. These are circulated examples. So these were circulated because they also had a back paper to it. I do have that Notgeld as well. I will show it to you. So for example, this one is in a better shape. And then there are pretty uncirculated examples as well, which had a back paper attached to it, which I have right now, but it would take time to dig it up now. So they were kept by collectors with them because they know the use would be very difficult, and it's just not practical to use them. So they were used definitely, but most of them were in the hands of collectors. Any more questions or requests, please let me know. We'll conclude the session. Please subscribe so that and the more you subscribe, the more I get to know that this was a good presentation, and then I'll come up with something more, and my fellow collectors will also come up with something more. Okay, Akansha, absolutely, we'll do a lecture on African banknotes as well. That is one of the themes I enjoy as well. Okay, it looks like I've answered most of the queries here. Thank you for tuning in and for your time. And thank you for Hobby Club for giving me this opportunity, and the people who have supported me. Mihir Bhai, who is hosting this, Anish Bhai, everybody, thank you so much.